You've heard the story 100 times. October 12th, 1492. A brave Italian explorer sails across the unknown ocean, lands in the Americas, and changes the world forever. He is celebrated with statues, parades, a national holiday. He is called a hero, a visionary, a pioneer. But what if everything you were taught about Christopher Columbus is only half the truth? What if the man on that famous ship was not a daring hero at all, but something far more complicated? Something that history books for centuries deliberately left out. Today, we're going behind the myth. We're looking at the real Christopher Columbus, the journals, the orders he gave, the atrocities he oversaw, and asking a question that every honest person must ask. Was Columbus a hero or a villain?
For most of us, the story goes like this. Christopher Columbus, born in Genoa, Italy around 1451, was a man of extraordinary courage. He had a radical idea that the earth was round, not flat, and that by sailing west he could reach Asia and its spices faster than sailing around Africa. Everyone laughed at him. Everyone said it was impossible. But Columbus convinced Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand of Spain to fund his voyage. In August 1492, he set off with 3 ships, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, and 90 men, into an ocean no European had dared to cross. 70 days later, October 12, 1492, land was spotted. Columbus had done the impossible. He had connected the old world to the new. He had opened up an era of discovery, trade, and civilization. He returned to Spain a hero. Statues were erected. Columbus Day became a federal holiday in the United States in 1937. Cities, streets, and even a country, Columbia, were named after him. He was written into textbooks as one of history's greatest explorers. That is the myth. Clean, simple, heroic. Now, let's look at what actually happened.
First, let's debunk even the basic myth. Columbus did not prove the earth was round. Educated Europeans already knew this. Greek philosophers had established it over 1,000 years earlier. What Columbus got wrong, almost fatally wrong, was the size of the earth. He massively underestimated it. He thought Asia was where the Americas turned out to be. He died still believing he had reached Asia, never once acknowledging what he had truly found. But that's almost a footnote compared to what happened next. When Columbus arrived in the Caribbean, on an island he called San Salvador, likely modern-day Bahamas, he encountered the Taíno people. These were not primitive savages. They were an advanced civilization with agriculture, trade networks, art, and governance. Columbus himself wrote in his journal that they were very gentle and without knowledge of what is evil. So, what did he do? On his very first day, he captured 6 Taíno people to bring back to Spain as slaves, not as ambassadors, not as guests, as slaves, to demonstrate the value of his discovery to the Spanish crown. During his second voyage in 1493, Columbus returned with 17 ships and over 1,200 men, not explorers, but colonizers. He established the first permanent European settlement in the Americas on the island of Hispaniola, modern Haiti and Dominican Republic, and that is where the horror truly began. Columbus instituted a system he called the encomienda, forced labor. Every Taíno adult was required to deliver a set quota of gold to Spanish authorities every 3 months. If they failed, and most did because gold was scarce, their hands were cut off. They were left to bleed to death as a warning to others. When the Taíno resisted, Columbus launched military campaigns against them. He ordered mass executions. He permitted his men to commit acts of extraordinary violence. Spanish historian Bartolomé de las Casas, who witnessed these events firsthand, documented massacres of entire villages, women, children, and the elderly. Within 50 years of Columbus's arrival, the Taíno population of Hispaniola, estimated at up to 1 million people, had been reduced to fewer than 500, one of the most rapid demographic collapses in human history. Columbus himself was eventually arrested by the Spanish crown's own investigators in 1500, stripped of his titles, and sent back to Spain in chains, not for what he did to the Taíno, but because his brutal governance was causing chaos that threatened Spain's own interests.
This isn't revisionist history. This isn't a modern political agenda. These are primary sources. Columbus's own journals, translated and preserved, record his orders to capture the Taíno and his intentions for forced labor from day one. Bartolomé de las Casas, a short account of the destruction of the Indies, written in 1542 by a Spanish priest and eyewitness, documented the massacres in detail. This text is available to read today. Ferdinand Columbus's Life of the Admiral, written by Columbus's own son, confirms many details of the voyages and Columbus's methods. Spanish royal court records from 1500, official government documents, led to Columbus's arrest, citing tyranny and misgovernance. Modern archaeology at the sites of La Navidad and La Isabela on Hispaniola has confirmed evidence of the violence and exploitation that occurred there. And DNA studies have confirmed the near total disappearance of the indigenous Taíno people within decades of European contact. The evidence is not disputed by serious historians. What is debated is how we frame it, and that debate tells us as much about us as it does about Columbus. Here is where it gets truly fascinating and a little unsettling. The heroic version of Columbus was largely invented, not in 1492, not in 1592, but in 1828, by the American author Washington Irving, who wrote a wildly popular and heavily fictionalized biography of Columbus. Irving invented the flat earth myth, dramatized Columbus as a lone genius fighting ignorant crowds, and turned him into the symbol of American ambition and courage. Then, in the late 1800s, the Knights of Columbus, a Catholic organization in the United States, lobbied hard to make Columbus a national holiday. The mythology was now official policy. And here is perhaps the most ironic twist of all. Columbus never set foot on the North American mainland, not once. He landed in the Caribbean, briefly touched Central and South America, but never reached what is today the United States. The country that celebrates him most enthusiastically is the one he never visited. Meanwhile, the Taíno people, long declared extinct, have been fighting back. In recent decades, DNA testing has confirmed that thousands of people across the Caribbean carry Taíno ancestry. They are still here. Their story is still being told. So here we are, hero or villain. The honest answer is Columbus was a man of his time who did extraordinary things and horrific things.
He was a brilliant, obsessive navigator. He was also a colonial administrator who enslaved and massacred people with calculated cruelty. The real question isn't about Columbus himself. It's about us. It's about why we were taught one version and not the other. It's about who benefits when history is simplified into clean heroes and easy stories. It's about whether we are brave enough to look at history the way it actually happened, complicated, painful, and real. History isn't a children's story. The people who shaped our world were not cartoons. They were human beings, capable of courage and cruelty, vision and violence. Understanding that doesn't make the past worse. It makes us better. Because the first step to learning from history is actually knowing what happened. And now, you do. If this video made you think, made you question something you were taught, hit that like button and subscribe. Because every week on Truth Behind History, we go back to the sources, check the evidence, and bring you the story behind the story. There's always more to know. I'll see you in the next one.